In this video, I'm going to show how to create a piston that's similar shape to this. So this is kind of like a flat top on the piston, and then you have four of these circular patterns that are removed from the top of the piston, probably for the valves to go into, it looks like. And then I think in this video we're just trying to cut these circular areas, okay? Now this particular piston design right here was actually done in 4C, but it was done with an older version of 4C before we had some new features. So I'm going to show how to remake this again, but with the newer features, which allows for a lot of versatility. We can make some changes to this after we create all the geometry. We can now make changes such as change the diameter of one of these circles or something like that. So yeah, so it should be a big benefit. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start over. Let's just go to File and New and make a brand new program. And so the first thing I'm going to do is click New Sketch, and let's go ahead and show our ruler, okay? And then I'll just hit C on the keyboard for circle, and we'll make a circle. And I think this is more commonly done in inch, so I'm going to go ahead and change over to inch now. Okay, so now I hit D on the keyboard for dimension, and I just click on that circle, and then I can put a dimension in here. We'll go ahead and do 4 inches. And then I'm going to hit C again for circle, and then hover over the origin, so 0, 0 there, and I'm going to drag up, and you can see that yellow dotted line is going to assure that my circle is now always aligned to the origin in the y-axis. If I did it over here, it would be aligned in x. We're going to go ahead and do it over here. And I'm just going to draw a circle. Again, press D, and then click on that circle and do something like that. We'll go ahead and make this 1.5 inches. Okay, so that looks good so far. I'm just you know, coming up with dimensions here. I don't have a drawing to go off of or anything, so I'm just kind of making this up as we go along here. So now I'm going to come over here and click on repeat, and then we do a rotary repeat. We may change the terminology here. This may be like I think we're going to change it over to pattern, so maybe a circular pattern. But anyway, we're going to click on the circle, and that's going to repeat it around the center. And I'm going to go ahead and change this from 8, which is the default, down to 4. Okay, so those are that represents our 4 valves. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and hit C again for circle, and then click on the center and create this kind of inner shape. Okay, and then D again to dimension, and then we'll just do maybe 2.5 inches, something like that. Then I'll hit T. And all these keystrokes I'm using, they're all accessible up here, right? So I can do create, circle, I did that one a few times, and then dimension, we hit D for dimension. Now I'm going to hit T for trim. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and, do that. Hit T for trim, and then click right there, right there, right there. Okay, so I'm just removing some of these curves that we don't need. Okay, so that looks good. So now let's go ahead and fillet these. Let's just come over here to Sketch and say Fillet, and then we can just click right here, right here. Now, as I'm clicking here, what you can do is you can fillet just each individual intersection, or if I click in an area where there's no obvious intersection, it grabs any intersection that's connected to this curve and fillets that. So it's kind of a faster way. There would be 16 of these, I guess, to click off if we didn't have that feature, but now we have only 4 to click off. Okay, so that looks good. And with the fillet, we get this, you know, radius readout. We can change the radius. Let's change this to 100 thou, and you can see all of these just update. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting here is we don't really have the original circle that I created. Right, we've kind of removed that and trimmed it out, so we have kind of this remnants of the circle in our 4 shapes over here. We still have this dimension right here. We still have the 4 inches. So if I come over here and I change it to 3.75, you'll see what happens. It's going to update everything, right? It just updates everything in the drawing. And likewise, I can change the size of the inner circle to say 3 inches, and that updates everything. And I still have this, you know, the first valve that I programmed, which is 1.5. I can change it to 1.25. Actually, let's go bigger. Let's go 1.75. And you can see what that does, right? So really versatile here. We can change all these dimensions around, and everything updates. And that's mainly due to the fact of some of these new features that allow us to dimension things and keep things in relationship. This technology is called constraints. Okay. So anyway, yeah, let's continue on here. So I think we're pretty much done with this sketch. So we'll just click Done Sketching. And so we're going to rename the sketch. We're going to call this valve for valve, something like that. I'm going to go ahead and make another sketch and just create a simple circle in this one. Do something like that. Okay. And I will now click E for extrude. So I'm done with the sketch. E is in 3D over here, and we can just say extrude 2D sketch into 3D. So E for extrude. And now this is kind of interesting because it gives us kind of the extrudable areas. You can see they're highlighted in green. So we no longer have to select edges. We can select edges still. We can also select kind of the region internally. So I'll just click on the region internally there. And I think the default extrude amount is -1. Yep, that looks good. And we'll hit E again for another extrude. And now I'm going to click on these internal shapes. And actually, let's turn off the original extrude so we can grab these easier. Okay, so we'll get that one. And then we want to say make a new one for this. Okay, so that looks good. So now what we're going to do is change some of these extrude values around in the second one. So we're going to go up instead of down. And we're going to go up, say, 125 thousandths. And now we don't want these to be, you can see by the different colors, these are not the same solid, which makes machining much more difficult. So we're going to change this over to add. Okay, so now we have one solid here that that we can just machine kind of this middle area here. So I think in the last drawing we had another board taken out of the middle. I'm not gonna do that right now just because I'm trying to not get details here. I'm trying to show more concepts than anything. So now I'm going to come over here. So now we're kind of done with the CAD. I'm going to assume this is exactly what we want to cut. And I'm just going to click on Pocket, and then I'm tell it we're going to use, say, a 3/8 flat end mill. And then we'll go ahead and just click on Change to Machine, and we'll select this face right here. And then let's compile that. Let's see what we get. This will take just a second. Okay, so that looks good. So let's go ahead and see what happens if we change some of these dimensions up here. If I come over here to the 4-valve sketch again, I have access to all of these dimensions, and I should be able to just change any of these dimensions, and our 3D should update. Let's see how well that works. Change it to 3, and you can see that it updated our whole 3D drawing. And I can change like the radius to say 0.2, be kind of big, but it should be okay. Okay, so that looks good. So it updated our drawing to 0.2 for the radius there. And now our pocket is actually still the old dimensions here because we haven't recompiled it. But if I click on the chains, you can see clearly it updated what it is going to have to cut. I just have to recompile it and it should update. And it does. So you can see everything is now connected, right? So if I make a change to my 2D drawing, it updates the model. And then if I make a change to the model, it updates the toolpath. And before, these connections were kind of looser. They weren't really as tightly connected. So if you updated one thing, you might have to go back and kind of recreate the whole 3D drawing. You have to just kind of start over in a sense. So anyway, this is a big benefit and should save a lot of time in a lot of cases. So I hope that helps. So one other thing I want to show real quick here, let's get rid of our toolpath, is many people are just kind of used to the way that 4C has worked for a long time, and they don't really want to learn anything new because the old software worked okay and the way that it worked before was okay. So all these dimensions and everything like that are not mandatory, but you do have to turn them off with an option, right? So when we right click on our any sketch, we have these two new checkboxes here. One is generate zonal regions, which are the green areas that you see here that you can select. So that's a big benefit. So you can turn that off if you don't want it to automatically generate that. That's less intrusive because it doesn't really affect the operator. It just kind of does it in the background. But the constraints is what I was explaining with the dimensions and everything like that. that's just different, right? It's better. It's an improvement, we believe, but it is different. So if you don't like that, if you don't want to use these, you can just uncheck constraints system, and everything goes back to sort of the old way of, you can move things around a little bit differently, but you won't have the advantage of being able to just update a dimension and then have the entire drawing just update itself, right? So anyway, I don't really recommend turning this off. I recommend using it because it's a benefit, but it's up to you. Okay.